Hey YouTubers, it's me, Lonnie Clark. That's for art again. I know, you're shocked, right? Another video, 2 in 1 day. Like I said in my other video, I'm going to be reading this book instead of what the nuclear industry doesn't want you to know, because we do know what they don't want us to know. So I thought it might be more useful. My hair's all pokey up. It might be more useful if we read this book. This was published in 2001 or 2002. I think it's 2001, written by Karl Grossman. And I thought this would be really pertinent right now, especially since we have the big announcement that we are going to have, what's it called? The Space Army or something stupid like that. Fascist. So this is written by Dr. Karl Grossman, and I'm just going to get into it. It has a very small, it's only like 70 or 8 pages. It's a really quick read. But I'm going to get into it. I'll read a chapter a day. I'm going to skip the foreword because I find that forewords, I don't know. I just don't like reading forewords, at least here, because I think they distract from the information. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to read this one. I'll take my glasses off. Vision for 2020. Oh, Lord. Let's get ourselves situated here, man. This one's going to be hard for me to digest, right? I mean, I guess I'll digest it. Look. Vision for 2020, full spectrum dominance. The United States is preparing to make space a new arena for war. I'm going to pull the microwave up close. The microwave. Okay, so let's start this over. Microphone. See. Boink. Big, gigantic. Looks like a whale. Anyways, I'm going to bring in the microphone closer. Vision for 2020, full spectrum dominance. The United States is preparing to make space a new arena of war. U.S. military documents speak of the U.S. seeking to control space from space dominant from space. U.S. military documents speak of the U.S. seeking to control space and from space dominate the earth below. The U.S. military, furthermore, would like to base weapons in space. Billions of tax dollars are being poured annually into U.S. preparations for such warfare. Is it a return of the Star Wars? In fact, Star Wars, the popular name given to the Strategic Defense Initiative by President Ronald Reagan, never went away. With its enormous, powerful complex of backers, it developed and maintained a momentum of its own. With the assumption of power by George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, or Richard Cheney, and an administration intimately linked to corporate and right-wing interests committed to expanding space military activities, Star Wars has received a huge boost. What the U.S. is up to is a violation of the intent of the Outer Space Treaty, the landmark 1967 international agreement that sets space aside for peaceful uses. Ironically, the U.S. was a leader in drafting this visionary treaty, which seeks to keep war out of space. Excuse me, I'm taking my socks off, you guys. It's super hot. There was only one narrow window to stop the U.S. plans from going forward and triggering what inevitably would follow. Other nations meeting the U.S. in kind, an arms race, and ultimately war in space. If the U.S. is allowed to move the arms race into space, there will be no return, says Bruce Gagnon, coordinator of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. Oh my gosh, that guy is my hero. I know him now. He's super awesome. You guys should check out this organization, Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space, the organization that is internationally challenging U.S. preparations to turn space into a war zone, that has been striving at the grassroots to keep space for peace. We have this one chance, he emphasizes, this one moment in history to stop the weaponization of space from happening. The U.S. space warfare plans are explicitly laid out in documents including the Vision for 2020 report of the U.S. Space Command. The U.S. Space Command coordinates the use of Army, Naval, and Air Force space forces and was set up by the Pentagon to help institutionalize the use of space, notes its website, www.spacecom.af.mil USSPACE, PACE, US PACE. Wow, this is on page 11 for those of you that want to look this up. Maybe you might find it. It's www.spacecom.af.mil/USSPACE. And that's on HTTP. The multicolored vision for 2020 features a laser weapon firing a beam from space, zapping a target below. Its cover is reprinted here because U.S. preparations for space warfare are so unbelievable, so incredible that it is best to see the actual documents firsthand. You can fully download this and many of the documents noted from this book from the U.S. Space Command website. The military is so brazen about its plans for space war, it displays them publicly online. So this is the cover. I'm going to show you this. Wow. Visions for 2020 starts with the wording that crawls as in the beginning of Star Wars movies. U.S. Space Command dominating the space dimensions of military operations to protect U.S. interests in investment. Integrating space forces into war-fighting capabilities across the full spectrum of conflict. Vision for 2020, issued in 1996, compares the U.S. effort to control space and Earth below on how centuries ago, quote, nations built navies to protect and enhance their commercial interests, unquote. How great empires of Europe ruled the waves and thus the world. And Visions of 2020 stresses the global economy. The globalization of the world economy will also continue with the widening gap between haves and have-nots, says the U.S. Space Command. Wow, they're actually acknowledging it. The view is that by controlling space and the Earth below, the U.S. will be able to keep those have-nots in line. I love Karl Grossman. He's awesome. The U.S. Space Command is rating itself to be the enforcement arm of the global economy, says Bill Schultzman, director of Citizens for Peace in Space, the group challenging U.S. space military activities in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where the U.S. Space Command is headquartered. The U.S. military not only acknowledges, it proudly proclaims that U.S. corporate interests are involved in setting U.S. military doctrine. President Dwight Eisenhower warned in his farewell address to the nation in 1961 of the military-industrial complex. That linkage has stressed the U.S. Space Command's long-range plan. The long-range plan, also starting out with a Star Wars-like type, states, the long-range plan has been the U.S. Space Command's #1 priority for the last 11 months, investing nearly 20 man-years to make it a reality. The development and production process by design involved hundreds of people, including about 75 corporations. So check out this, you guys. This is actually from the book. It does scroll down, just like the Star Wars movie. Can you guys see that? This is our real reality, you guys. So this whole war machine is going on outside of our knowledge, our consent. And frankly, if we did try to consent, what did he say? Targeted use towards us. The U.S. will be able to keep those have-nots in line. That is a phrase I love. Oh, Lord. You don't need to do much investigating to find out the identities of those corporations. The long-range plan provides a list, beginning with the Aerojet, continuing through Boeing, Hughes Space, Lockheed Martin, Rand Corp, Raytheon, Sparta, and TRW to Vista Technologies. The long-range plan, issued in 1998, explains in its introduction that vision for 2020 guides how military space strategy will evolve in the 21st century and is the command for measuring the progress U.S. Space Command, that's what it's called, and its components. To carry out the vision, we have developed a very ambitious and much needed long-range plan. Now is the time, says the long-range plan, to begin developing space capabilities, innovative concepts of operations for war fighting, and organizations that can meet the challenges of the 21st century. Even as military forces have become more downsized in the 1990s, their commitments have steadily increased. As military operations become more lethal, space power enables our streamlined forces to minimize the loss of blood and national treasure. Space power in the 21st century looks similar to previous military revolutions, such as aircraft carrier warfare and blitzkrieg. These guys are completely insane. They are comparing space war to just like blow each other up. This is just shocking. Why am I shocked? I'm always like knock my socks off. Let me see how far this chapter goes. Let's see. I'm going to hold on. I don't want to read for too long. So I've already read up to page. Well, I've only read like 5 pages, I guess. Because there's no. Wait. Sorry about this. Oh, okay. It goes up to page 18. We're on page 15. So I'm just going to keep going. I just can't believe that they're comparing this to regular warfare. The time has come to address among war fighters and natural policymakers, the long-range plan goes on. The emergence of space is a center of gravity for DoD, the Department of Defense, and the nation. We must commit enough planning and resources to protect and enhance our access to and use of space. Although international treaties and legalities constrain some of the long-range plan's initiatives and concepts, our abilities in space will keep evolving as we address these legal, political, and international concerns. Not to worry about international law, says the U.S. Space Command. It'll be taken care of. The long-range plan, amid boxes containing quotes such as this from General Ronald Fogelman, Air Force Chief of Staff, I think that space in and of itself is going to be very quickly recognized as the fourth dimension of warfare, and makes a series of declarations, such as, read this. The United States will remain a global power and exert global leadership. It is unlikely that the United States will face a global military peer competitor through 2020. The United States won't always be able to forward base its forces. Widespread communications will highlight disparities in resources and quality of life, contributing to unrest in developing countries. The global economy will continue to become more interdependent. Economic alliances as well as the growth and influence of multinational corporations, will blur security agreements. The gap between have and have not nations will widen, creating regional unrest. The United States will remain the only nation able to protect power globally. One of the long acknowledged and commonly understood advantages of space-based platform is no restriction or country clearances to overfly a nation from space. We expect this advantage to endure. Achieving space superiority during conflicts will be critical to the U.S. successful on the battlefield. That's the 14 reference. For those concerned about turning the heavens into a war zone, the Long Range Plan counsels. Space has been militarized for 40 years. Reconnaissance, surveillance, warning, communication, weather, and most recently, navigational satellites were designed and deployed to serve national security interests. The increasing number of countries and consortia turning to space to provide and receive services and to generate wealth, will force nations to adapt this emerging environment. That's from the Long Range Plan, you guys. Generate wealth. Fuckers. The Long Range Plan then continues on for more than 100 pages, detailing the U.S. plans for, quote, control of space, unquote, quote, full spectrum dominance, unquote, quote, full force integration, unquote, and, quote, global engagement, unquote. Space is the ultimate high ground, says Guardians of the High Frontier, a 1997 U.S. Air Force Space Command report. Guardians of the High Frontier, that's number 17 reference in this book. The Air Force Space Command is committing to the control and exploitation of space, it says. Master of Space is the motto of the U.S. Space Command. Master of Space appears as the Space Command uniform patch displayed in the Guardians of the High Frontier and is emblazoned on the front entrance of the major Space Command element, the 50th Space Wing in Colorado. Master of Space. That pretty well sums up the U.S. military attitude towards space. Almanac 2000 is a just-issued Air Force Space Command report that flatly declares the future of the Air Force is space. Into the 21st century, it says, the U.S. Air Force needs to be, quote, globally dominant. Tomorrow's Air Force will likely dominate the air and space around the world, selectively lethal. The Air Force may fight intense, decisive wars with great precision, hitting hard while avoiding collateral damage in both real space and in computer cyberspace. Virtually present, space forces complement the physical presence of terrestrial forces. Although they are not visible from the ground, space forces provide virtual presence through their ability to supply global mobility, control the high ground, support for versatile combat capability, and ensure information dominance and sustained deterrence. The future Air Force will be better able to monitor and shape world events. Get this? Shape. I have a thought in my head as to why they told Trader. I mean, the reason Trader Trump brought up the thing about Space Force is he's being told about it. And he's being told they're doing it. They're going to have to knock him off. He knows way too much. He's such a fucking idiot. U.S. military leaders are blunt in describing U.S. plans to make war in, from, and into space. As General Joseph Ashey, the then commander-in-chief of the U.S. Space Command, put it, it's politically sensitive, but it's going to happen. Some people don't want to hear this, and it for sure isn't in vogue, but absolutely, we're going to fight in space. We're going to fight from space, and we're going to fight into space. Ashley told Aviation Week in Space Technology in 1996. That's why the U.S. has developed programs in direct energy and a hit and kill mechanisms. In the article headlined USSC, which means U.S. Space Command, prepares for future combat missions in space. This was written in 1996 in Aviation Week in Space Technology. Wow. Ashley spoke of space control, the U.S. military's term for controlling space and Space Force application, its definition for dominating Earth from space. Said General Ashley will expand into these two missions because they'll become increasingly important. We will engage terrestrial targets someday, ships, airplanes, land targets from space. We'll engage targets in space, from space. Or as then Secretary, or as then Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Air Force for Space, Keith Hall said, also Director of National Reconnaissance Office, told the National Space Club in 1997. With regard to space dominance, we have it, we like it, and we're going to keep it. As General Richard B. Myers, then Commander-in-Chief of U.S. Space Command, in a speech titled Implementing Our Vision of Space Control, delivered in 1999 to the U.S. Space Foundation, stated, "The threat, ladies and gentlemen, I believe is real. It's a threat to our economic well-being. This is why we must work together to find common ground between commercial imperatives and the president's tasking me for space control and protection." Wow. So I'm going to stop at the next subtitle called Space-Based Lasers. That's where we're going to stop. It's on page 18. Wow, this will go quick. It's a fast read. Both these books are going to be a fast read. In retrospect, listening to Donald Trump talk about Space Force, that's why I picked that book. It makes me realize that I mean, it's kind of like what I've been telling you about the nuclear stuff, right? They're not going to tell us when there's a nuclear meltdown unless it blows up. They're not going to tell us about the weapons in space. They're not going to tell us about the war in space. Man, I hope this is something Govey Fawkey covers on his show when I get that up and going. So anyways, you guys, put your courage feet on. Totally love you guys. Please subscribe. Remember to thumbs up. Let's grow my channel. I really want to push and lean into this, and we just get the information out, because these books are written. People don't read books, which is why I decided I'd start reading them, so that we could, at least you guys can have like audio of it. I did get permission from both these authors, so here we go. Since I have permission, I'm taking it. Ciao, you guys. Love you so much. Bye.